My career started in 1985 at the jail over here at 312 Main that looks like a castle. We actually used that jail. It was built in 1888, and we used it up until 1990. And I was a teenage jailer there. Thankfully, I was on the outside of the bars, not on the inside. But that was a really good way to get my start. I learned how to talk to people because everyone in jail wants everything under the sun, and legally you can't give them anything but meals and clothes and things of that nature. But I'm honored to stand here before you as your county sheriff. Does everyone here live in Williamson County? Great. We want to make your experience here realistic, so we're going to, Starla, if you'll tell them we need 20 jail trays for lunch. Just kidding. But by the Texas Constitution, the primary responsibility of your county sheriff is operating the county jail, and it is above you, and it's above the building next door. It's all connected. The first part of that building was built in 1990. There were about 300 beds in that jail. Quickly outgrew that. 2013, they built this part of the building, added an additional 800 or so cells. This morning we had 658 people in our county jail. Roughly 554 of those were males, 101 females. There's about 500 and so felony offenders and 121 something misdemeanor offenders. So by the Texas Commission on Jail Standards, there are so many rules that we have to follow to keep your county jail running so that we don't have to send those prisoners to another county and pay that county to house them. We have to make sure that they're fed 3 times a day. They have to have clean uniforms twice a week. They have to be offered recreation 3 times a week. That's not to say that they take us up on that. But we provide them with tablets, like big phones, which sounds crazy. But hey, they pay to subscribe to the service. They get to watch movies. They get to behave because they're occupied with that and they're not sitting there playing cards or fighting with each other. So anything that we can do to keep them at peace while they're here is a good thing. An empty jail would be a happy jail if we didn't have any crime, but unfortunately we do in Williamson County. But as the district attorney said, we work closely with him and with the county attorney to make sure that those most serious cases are punished and those people are in jail. There's a state-run probation department. There are so many people that are put on probation, and that's just a way to get them out of the county jail and try to hold them accountable. They're supposed to pay restitution, they pay fees, they're supposed to report regularly. They don't all do that, but a majority of them do. So that's people that we have kind of a thumb on to hopefully keep them from reoffending, but we're not having to take care of them here in the county jail. But there's so much more to the sheriff's office. When I worked at the sheriff's office in the 80s, there were about 55 people. Now we're up to about 555 employees. So running a jail, that is the largest amount of our staff are in the Corrections Bureau. We provide them also with medical care, psychological care, dental care. By law, we have to do that. So this past Tuesday, the Commissioner's Court signed a contract with a vendor who provides the medication for the jail. 1 year's $981,000 for prescription medication that we're having to provide for these people. So the jail is a very expensive operation. It's imperative that we take good care of them because if, God forbid, one person passes away in our jail, that's an automatic $1 million that the county's paying out just because they were in our custody when they passed away. So we have EMTs on staff, and we have doctors that come daily, dentists that come twice a week. We provide psychological care. We have a program that my predecessor started called the Jail-Based Competency Restoration Program. There used to be a lot more beds across the state in state hospitals for mental health care. For example, the state hospital in Austin down on 45th and Guadalupe, they used to have 2,500 beds that they would serve people that have mental health needs. Now there's 300 beds there. So that's why you see people wandering around on the street that really need help, and that help's not there for them if they don't have insurance or funds to go to a private care facility. But enough about the jail. That's a big responsibility. But the sheriff's office does so much more. If you live in the rural areas of the county and you call 911 for law enforcement, the sheriff's office is the first line defense for you that's going to show up there. If a deputy's not nearby, there's a deputy constable or a state trooper or someone in that area, those people will respond to those calls. We work closely with our partners. We have to do that. And they'll come out to your house, take a report. If it warrants a criminal investigation, then that will be forwarded to our detective division. The detectives follow up on those cases. And if it's something that's happening immediately and the offender is there, they may be arrested on site. If someone comes and burglarizes your house and leaves, then that would be a report taken, and then a detective would work on that to try to determine who that person is that committed that crime. Since I've only been here about 111 days, best I can count, so I don't have a wonderful PowerPoint like our district attorney had, but I would like to share with you what our deputies did just in the month of March. So just during the month of March, they answered 11,226 calls for service. So that's people calling 911 or our non-emergency number needing law enforcement. Traffic citations issued were 762. So many more people are killed on a daily basis in traffic crashes than there are in violent crime, thankfully. So it's important that we have a traffic division, and they try to keep that down to a minimum. They issued 1,718 warnings, so they wrote far more warnings to try to get compliance. We arrested 190 people. That's just the sheriff's office that arrested those people. We have an animal control division. They responded out to almost 600 calls. We have a livestock division that deals with the stray animals or livestock that gets out on the roadway, or people that are mistreating their cattle or horses and not feeding them and so on. They responded to 230 calls. We had over 400 disturbance calls, and cases referred to CID, Criminal Investigation Division, was almost 400. So these men and women at the sheriff's office are working really, really hard every day to keep crime under control in Williamson County. We partner with all the other agencies. Our communications actually falls under emergency management. So if you call 911, that call doesn't come to this building, it comes to the Emergency Operations Center out off the Interloop. They dispatch for, I think, 15 police agencies and 11 fire departments, or the other way around. So they're quite busy answering everybody's worst call on their worst day. That would be a very tough and challenging job. I've never done that job working in communications, but we're sure thankful that we have those people that are willing to take those calls and make sure that the resources are routed appropriately, and they do a fantastic job. The deputy sheriffs, they work 12-hour shifts, so they're either working 6 in the morning till 6 in the evening, or 6 in the evening until 6 in the morning. We're asking the Commissioner's Court for about 37 additional employees this budget cycle. That's a whole lot of money. One deputy costs between $150,000 and $200,000 to stand up one new officer. When you figure in a Tahoe, all the electronic equipment that goes in it, the training provided for the officer for 6 months, their uniforms, their protective equipment that they're issued, their firearms, and the benefits that the county provide to them. So it's very expensive, but considering how much our county is growing, we're over 700,000 people in our county now, and there's 1,134 square miles. And so our county goes from the city limits of Thorndale to about 3 miles west of Liberty Hill, and then in Round Rock, where 45 crosses 35, all the way up to about 4 miles north of Gerald. And then on the east side, it's Bartlett to south of Copeland. So there's a lot of unincorporated areas. Just outside of Gerald, there's about a 4 mile square area there, part of Sonterra, I believe. There's like 16,000 residents living there. It's out in the county. So we're responsible for law enforcement in that area. Well, the city of Taylor has between 14 and 16,000. They have probably 3 officers dedicated at any given time to their city. So in theory, the 11 or 14 deputies we have on patrol, 3 of them ought to be in that 4 mile square area if we provide the same service that the city of Taylor does. We don't have that luxury right now. So one thing we're asking is to add an entire shift of patrol to the sheriff's office. So that would be 8 more deputies and a sergeant times 2, because they rotate shifts. And that would allow us to have a shift from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. that would overlap our shift change at 6 o'clock, because what happens at 5 o'clock, if a call comes in, just because the shift ends at 6 o'clock, if that deputy's not finished, we're starting to pay them overtime after 6 p.m. until they're have that call taken care of. So if we had calls from 3 to 6 in the afternoon, we could assign that to a deputy that has 12 more hours to come on duty. It would cut down on overtime pay. It would give us more people out on the street to answer those calls and arrest people and that are doing things they shouldn't be doing. So there's so much I could stand up and talk to you all day, but I'm so proud to be the sheriff of such a fine agency. My first job was at this agency 40 years ago, and it's really humbling to come back and work alongside all these fine people. There's one guy that's still working in the jail that I worked with in 1985. He's probably our longest serving employee, a lieutenant back there that's still doing a fine job for us. Why he's still working here, I don't know, but I'm glad to, very, very glad to have him. We have civil service as of about almost a year ago, and from a lieutenant all the way down to administrative assistant, everyone's covered under civil service, and so that gives them a lot of protections. It's good in a way. Sometimes it's not so good for the administration, so if we have someone that's not necessarily performing up to our standards, and we've worked with them and done everything we can to keep them, and they're just not meeting our expectations, if their disciplinary review board decides they should be terminated, they can appeal that to the chief deputy. He reviews it. If he decides that they should be terminated, then it's given to me. If I decide they should be terminated, they're put on suspension indefinitely without pay, yet they still have a right to appeal it to a 3-member civil service commission made up of 3 civilians. And so we don't come to work looking to fire anybody. We want to come and make them better so that our sheriff's office shines. Unfortunately, though, just like every profession, sometimes there are people in law enforcement, like other professions, that don't live up to our standards or choose to do things that are against the law. As a Texas Ranger, I probably put 3 or 4 police officers in the penitentiary only because that's where they needed to be. We didn't need them in our profession doing bad things, making everyone look bad. And I would expect everyone that works with and for me here to be at their best at all times. And so we're working hard to create an environment where people want to come to work, where they feel welcome. We want to pay them and equip them and train them so that they come home safe at the end of each day. Law enforcement's a tough job. When you're at your very best, there's 10 people waiting to kick you in the groin. And the media doesn't always help us, especially since about 2008. Some unfortunate things happened, and the media sometimes harps on those bad things and just plays them over and over and over again. But every day we do so many good things that you don't hear about. You know, it may be performing CPR on someone until an ambulance could get there and saves that person's life, or our drone program going out and finding someone that's wandered away from a facility or a child that's missing. And so we really need to capitalize on those things to show the public that their money's being well spent, and they have some great people working for them, keeping them safe every day. So that's about a 100-mile-an-hour overview of the sheriff's office, but I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Can you explain the difference between a constable and a sheriff?
Sure, that's a good question. Constables have been around in Texas a little over 200 years. The first courts that were created, the judge was there, but there was no means to get the people to court. So they looked back to England. There had been constables there for ever and ever. So they appointed a constable in Texas to go out and summons people and serve the paperwork and bring them to court. And I actually was appointed and served as a constable here in Williamson County for 3 years and 11 months. Our good constable, Kevin Stoffel, who was a fine guy, passed away unexpectedly in September of 2021, and the Commissioner's Court appointed me to that position. So the primary responsibility of a constable is taking care of the Justice of the Peace Court and that judge. That's the lowest level court in Texas. Here's misdemeanor cases on things that usually are outside the jurisdiction of a city. And so providing bailiffs for that court, protecting that judge, and serving all of the civil process that that court generates, along with court orders that come from the county and district attorney, county and district clerk's offices. So last year I was at the constable's office. We served about 5,000 pieces of civil paper. So that's individual services to different people. And you know, if there are lawsuits in that court, or if there are warrants that are generated, the deputy constables do that work. So they're not necessarily the first line responders to 911 in the rural areas, but they certainly do respond to those calls when they're closer, or it could be a benefit to us. So that's why it's so important for all your elected officials to work together.
Thank you.
Man, yes, sir.
I know that police officers in the city and counties sometimes have little issues going on, as you stated.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a system in your agency that actually reviews what they've done and try to change that mentality so they do not get fired, or in some ways, and then have them come back?
Sure, I have people that randomly review their dash cam from their patrol car and their body cam, as well as from the jail, the videos that are in there. And when we see something that looks like it might need attention, then we would address that. And you know, when you get to time for an evaluation and someone gets a bad evaluation, that's a failure on that supervisor's part for not taking care of that person all year and directing him to, or her to do better. So we have things in place for that. Yes, ma'am.
Does the hat come with the job?
No, but I don't think you want to see my ugly balding head. When I got in this job, I had a full head of hair and a full set of teeth 40 years ago, and a hat, and I still have the hat. Yes, ma'am.
So I know in Williamson County we have a lot of MUDs, and kind of the tax assessor kind of talked about the number of entities that we have. But it seems, from my experience, I live up in Gerald, so with Centera, I know that they pay officers to come out during certain times and that kind of stuff.
They do.
But as those pop up, does that put a heavier burden on the sheriff's department? And how are you guys dealing with that growth with more and more MUDs coming?
I think for every new rooftop, it costs the county about $400 a year for services for fire, police, EMS, and roadways and things like that. And you know, they'll build a MUD with 300 houses. Well, that's probably at least 600 new people and that many more calls for service and different things. And it's gotten to the point where the municipal utility districts will enter into an agreement with us for our deputies who are off duty to provide additional coverage in those areas. I wish I had enough deputies that they would not have to do that, but right now at the point we are, we have contracts with probably 15 different MUD districts for that additional patrol.
Will that ever be like a division that there's patrol officers that just work in the MUDs and have larger contracts with the MUDs?
You know, down in Harris County, the constables do a lot of that. Up here, we have not seen that yet. So I would like to grow our sheriff's office where we could offset that sum and they wouldn't have to pay twice. Yes, ma'am.
If the personnel had 12-hour shifts,
Uh-huh.
that's 12 hours out of
24.
24.
Mhm.
And then you have off-duty police officers serving MUDs.
Yes, ma'am.
They're not really
Where do
getting any off time.
Where do they find the time? So the way those 12-hour shifts work, if you're on days, this week you make work Monday, Tuesday, you're off Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then you'll work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the next week it changes, so you get a weekend off every other week, and so they usually work part of their days off in those extra jobs. Over my 40-year career, probably 25 of those years, I had an extra job that I worked all that time because law enforcement at that time just didn't pay that much, and we enjoyed electricity. Not being a smart aleck, but they work a lot of their days off at those extra jobs.
So do you find that affects their performance?
Well, we have it limited a certain amount of hours that they can work in a 24-hour period, so that they have to be off, I believe, 8 out of those so that they can rest. And I'm not saying it doesn't affect them, but they choose to work those extra jobs. So but when they're here, we want them to be at their best, no doubt about that. Well, thanks for coming. It says a lot that you guys are part of this program, that you want to know more about your county government, and we're certainly proud to show off the Sheriff's Office to you, and glad you could be here today. You have my card. My email is on there, as well as the number of how to reach me. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to talk to you at any time. Thank you.